This is Art Is, a podcast for artists, where we talk about all things top of mind for emerging artists. I'm Isotta, and I'm an artist. I make sculpture, and I'm currently really interested in exploring how making sculpture with marble, a truly ancient material, can get us as humans in touch with deep geologic time. I'll be sharing more about my practice throughout this season, which is a new thing for me, because I started this podcast back in 2021 as a recent art school grad, grappling with starting my professional practice in the pandemic and feeling very lost and alone. Working on this pod helped me expand my horizons creatively and intellectually. So here we are, 3 years later, still making the show, but now with an amazing co-host.
And I'm Lauryn. I'm an artist and a career coach for creatives. I help artists and creatives master their mindset, align with their purpose, and make money doing work they love. Lately, I've been working on my acrylic and gouache cake paintings, and most interested in learning more about the intersection of emotional well-being and spirituality, especially as it relates to life as an artist. Well, welcome back to the Art Is podcast, a podcast for artists. We are talking with Gus Harper today, an artist who lives in Los Angeles, just like me. And we're so happy to be here, all three of us.
Yeah, thanks for having us.
Yeah, it's great to meet you, Gus, and get to connect.
Likewise.
Yeah. So Gus, why don't you go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself? Give us an introduction of who you are.
Okay. I'm actually from Santa Monica, and my studio is at the Santa Monica airport, even though I live nearby in Venice. So my mom's an artist, so I wasn't like a foreign idea to me to be an artist one day when I grew up. And I think it was just always a dream I had when I was a little kid. Like, if you ask a little kid, 7-year-old, what do you want to be when you grow up? And I would say something like, oh, I want to be an NFL player, an astronaut, an artist, and a fireman. And then as I got older, the other things fell away, and I more and more just wanted to be an artist. And then when I think I was 27, I was living in Santa Barbara, and I moved to LA, and I just said, you know what? I'm just gonna be an artist now. I don't know. I just thought, the life is short. Let's like dreams while I was young. And it was something I'm like, I'm gonna be an artist. I gotta chase my dream. I'm gonna do it at least until I was 30. And then I just 30 passed. I didn't even think about it. And yeah, it's been an awesome ride. And I find myself traveling the world doing art and feeling very fulfilled doing so. And I get to be on cool podcasts like this.
Amazing. Yeah, 27, that's the Saturn return. Astrologically speaking, I don't know if you've ever heard of that, but a lot of people go through like you have different paths at that point. Like it's a big moment in your life where you're like, okay, I could either go this way or I could go this way. I got sober at 26 and I moved to LA at 27. So it was like a big time for me as well.
Well, I'm 27 actually right now. So yeah.
No, and we know about the 27 Club, right?
Yeah, no, I like Lauryn's philosophy a little bit more on it. The Saturn return.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah. Yeah. So I have a fun story too about how Gus and I met.
I don't know.
Yeah. So I was teaching classes in Santa Monica, some art classes, and I would drive by the 7-Eleven and I saw this eye that was painted on the 7-Eleven next to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. Yeah. I'm like, that eye is so cool. And I kept seeing the same type of work all over Venice and Santa Monica. And I was just thinking like, oh, I really love that. And then I go to my friend's house, who's also an artist, Tim. He makes jewelry and these really cool beads, hanging bead strands. And I see the eye in his house, in a little eye in his kitchen. And I was like, is that same eye? Like it's and the eye for me represents creativity. It's always a reminder. It's my symbol to make art. So whenever I start seeing the eye, it's a reminder for me to keep making art. So it was like even more just prevalent, like I noticed it. And so then Tim was like, "Oh yeah, I want you to meet my friend Gus. Like he's this great artist." And I was like, "Oh, cool. Like I get to meet this guy now." And then about a week before that, I was driving past the Santa Monica airport and I see the studios and I was thinking, I wonder who works at those studios. It's so cool. Like how amazing to have an art studio right here. And then lo and behold, I meet you for dinner with Tim and you take me to your studio and it's like the same exact space. Like a week prior, I was thinking, I wonder who works there. So it just happened so
Oh,
like synchronistic. It was really cool. Yeah.
yeah, it's pretty fun. And Tim Roller is a great guy. What a cool guy to be introduced by.
Yeah, exactly.
And that's 7-Eleven where the prestigious location of the 7-Eleven where my mural is 1 block from my house. So I live over there in Venice.
Yeah. Yeah. So tell us a little bit about like your work as I guess we can start with like more of the work that I see on the streets and like what made you decide to start putting your work all over the streets?
Oh, I have to think kind of backwards on that one. It's a little hard, but I think it started with my travels. I'd done a little bit of mural work in the States. And I think many years ago, I was in Nepal and I was doing, I don't know what I was doing there. And at the end of my trip, I had 1 day free. And I was just kind of walking around and I looked at there's a big wall in this one area. I'm like, gosh, that'd be a perfect place for a mural. And all of a sudden it just hit me. I'm like, that would have been the most carpe diem thing ever. I totally should be the guy who does murals in other countries, but like, I never think ahead of stuff like that. It was such a good idea that like almost like hurt my feelings that I didn't think of it ahead of time to be prepared. But I carried that thought with me, and I didn't know that life would start taking me back overseas again really soon. And I'm like, this time I'm going to be prepared. And I think I had a show in Kathmandu. I had an art show, and so I made sure to set aside time, and I started doing murals in different countries. And I was really traveling quite a bit, so I would do at least one mural in every country I went to. And I had an art show. I think I had a show in Kathmandu. And the end of this very long trip, I ended up in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, and I walked into this hotel and the I had pipes over my back, like pipe cylinders that had my paintings rolled up in them, but it kind of looks like weaponry when I carried it over my back. And the man who owned the hotel is like, "Hey, what's in your case there?" And I'm like, "Oh, it's art." And he's like, "Oh, could I see it?" And he asked me to show him the paintings. So I ended up taking all the paintings that I showed in Kathmandu. I spread them all over the floor of his hotel. Well, I had no idea that this man was a cultural affairs officer in Malaysia. And he said, "Could you have a show here? Could you do murals here? Do you like to do murals?" I'm like, "Do I like to do murals? This is my favorite thing." And he said, "How about," he wanted me to have a show December 25th. I said, "That's sort of a big day in my country." And he laughed. He goes, "Is that Christmas?" I'm like, "Yes, it is." I said, "Look, maybe one day, who knows? Maybe one day I'll come back to Kuala Lumpur." And I said goodbye to him. I mean, when am I ever going to go back to Kuala Lumpur? It's not next door. Well, a couple months later, I get offered a show in Tokyo, and there's an opening, and then 3 months later, there's a closing. So I'm like, "Oh, what am I going to do in between?" I'm like, "Well, I'm in Tokyo. I might, I called the guy up. I'm like, "Hey, I can do those murals." So he ended up they flew me down to a city called Salama in Western Malaysia. And I spent 6 weeks doing murals there. And then I just continued on doing murals all over the place. And I started making some of what you saw, the things on telephone poles, the street art. I started making those actually as props at my art show when people would take photos behind like a large painting like this. I made something for them to hold that looked like something in the painting, so that when they took a photo, it would be embedded. They would look embedded into the photo, and people start enjoying the props. And I'm like, you know what? I started doing photo shoots with the props outside in the world, out in nature, And I don't know when slowly they started going up on telephone poles, and now they're all over West LA. I mean, they're all over the place, but they don't last that long. People take them, which is kind of nice.
Yeah.
And yeah, but you know, all that to talk about murals and street art, I do spend most of my time in my studio doing my paintings. So
Yeah.
that's the main part of my artwork.
And as far as like going back to your first murals, was that all self-funded? Like, or did people pay you for those murals, or were they just kind of like, oh, here's a space, I can do it? Or how did you actually find the spaces? And did you get paid to do that?
Okay, so yes, I get paid.
But or in the beginning, like early.
Um, I think the very first one I ever did, I won a contest. Like I applied to be in a contest, and I was one of the artists who won. So I got paid for that. And then um, when I went overseas, you know, I'd be in like random places like India or Sri Lanka. I would just do one as a gift. Like I would say, hey, as an ambassador of my country, I'm gonna do one, and it was a learning experience. But then what happened is I would post pictures of them on social media, and people said, hey, how do I get a mural in my backyard? How do I get a mural in my art studio or in my yoga studio? Like all things like that. I'm like, hey, you just hire me and I'll come out there. And they're like, how much? And I just gave them a price, and it became a thing. So yes, if somebody wants a mural, they'll pay me, but I don't like, you know, I don't like make it super expensive. I make it so they can afford it. But yes, I get paid. It's kind of like what I do for a living. So of course, um, yeah.
Yeah.
So anybody here who wants one, I'll do it for them.
Yeah.
As long
Yeah.
as they don't try and tell me too much like what to paint, you know, like, and it's not really a problem. Usually people, they see my stuff and they're like, oh, I like that painting. Could you paint something like that on my wall? I'm like, yes. Sometimes people are just like, here's the wall. Can't wait to see what you do. I'm like, great.
Yeah.
So yeah, but
Yeah.
every so often I'll feel the need to go rogue and just go do something, and I'll bust one out. Like the last one I did one in Chiang Mai, and it was at the hotel where I stay, and they provide me an art studio. It's such an awesome place. But I painted a mural on the outside as a exchange. That's how so I don't have to pay rent. Like you paid that mural, you don't pay rent. I'm like, great, done. So it was a nice little barter.
So
That's
cool.
awesome. I love
Yeah.
Chiang Mai. Wait, what was the hotel?
I will give it props. It's called UD
Cool.
Cozy Hotel. It's just outside the old city, and it's so beautiful. I'm going back to Chiang Mai. I'm going back to Cozy Hotel on Monday.
Oh wow, that's
Yeah,
awesome.
yeah. So I'm looking
Cool.
forward to that. And I'll
Well,
probably do some murals while I'm out there.
nice.
Yeah.
Well, I was wondering, in your mural practice, like how much crossover is there with your painting work? Because you said most of the time you spend in your studio working on paintings. Like, are they, of a similar vein? Like, is there, a different approach that you have, or like, how do you kind of, think about those two different practices?
Yeah, they are. They're very, very similar. You know, I made an observation that a lot of times what makes a really good mural would look silly on a canvas.
Mm.
You know, like it could be like these. I see these incredible murals of like an elephant coming three-dimensionally, like bursting out of the wall. You know, it's like a 3D effect, and it's incredible as a mural. But if I put it on a canvas, it would be kind of like a little corny little painting. And then sometimes you see something like a Rothko where it's a color field. It's a beautiful canvas, but it wouldn't really resonate on the side of a big building. So I thought I want to make some work that could work either. I remember thinking that, and one of the big learning experiences I had to answer your question is when I came back from one of my trips, I got my friend Harry Grammer gave me the biggest project I've ever had, which was a 700-foot long mural in Malibu. And it was an old jail for kids, and they were converting it into a college. But they had this giant wall around it, 17 feet high, 700 feet long. So I would go out there every day and paint it to make it look vibrant and celebratory. But a couple of days it rained. So on those rainy days, I just came into my studio. But I was so used to painting on a large scale that it was really easy for me to just in my studio. I'm like, oh yeah, I'll paint a 17-foot tall canvas in my studio. And so now I look like some of the paintings, like even the one behind me, some murals they don't have to be huge. There's some very small murals. Um, and some of my canvases are bigger than a lot of my murals. So it's not really that much of a difference. I think people are a little surprised though when I do my mural work that I don't use spray paint. I'm just out there with a brush. And you know, I very much like the texture of the walls. Like I like if I'm painting a face, I love I can blend a face on the like stucco walls. I think that's kind of cool. But when I show people, like if I show you my paintings over there, like those paintings in the distance, they're all about 10 feet tall. So that kind of could register as a mural. So
Yeah.
yeah, there's not a whole lot of difference. And I mean, there's just a few things I might not put my oil stick on an outdoor mural, that kind of stuff. But
So
and by the
cool.
way, I want to make one thing I want to make clear. Every time I go do a mural, I realize, oh my God, I have no idea what I'm doing. It's so funny because after all these years, I still have no idea what I'm doing. I'm just more comfortable not knowing what I'm just like, okay, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I can figure it out. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I think that's such a good point because like I had a coaching session with someone yesterday, one of my clients, and the same thing. It's like she was like, "How do I get rid of the fear of public speaking?" And I'm like, "You don't. You never do. Like it just is an energy that you're with. Like you don't know what you're doing, right? And you do it anyway. Like there's always some level of like unknown when you're doing something, and that's kind of like the great thing about it. Like it's kind of beautiful in a way that you get to, the more you do something, you get more comfortable with that fear of the unknown, and you play with it more, and that's where the magic happens, really.
Yeah, but I think you're definitely right. You get comfortable with whatever comes out, you can accept it, you know that it's okay. But like probably Izzy and myself, like the same thing that we get to work alone in our studio and figure things out. So there's this nice thing we have where if there's nobody watching us, we get to take our time and we can work in our mind and keep working out until we resolve issues. When I do a mural, a lot of times, like when I was in Sri Lanka, I got permission to do a mural at a train station, and I immediately had a crowd around me, and they watched every step of the way for days. There was a crowd, and that's like public speaking. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm like, this is like a performance piece. There was no time for me to sit there and be like, oh, what should I paint next? I just kept painting, which was really a healthy thing to do. But there was I just had to have faith. I'm like, they don't have any expectation what it's going to look like. And by the way, when I got that mural, I didn't have any idea what I was going to paint. So so it's like going up that public speaking thing. I didn't feel really comfortable with it, but I just had to like, okay, see what happens. And I mean, I'm sure Izzy, like, when you work, you're probably mostly by yourself, right?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I am by myself.
Yeah, and it gives you like you can go at your own speed, right?
Yeah. Today was
Yeah,
a very slow day.
yeah, and those are important days too, right?
Yeah. Just looking at the work, that's something I'm learning.
So that's something that it can be paralyzing as an artist. Like, I don't know how you are with your sculpture, but sometimes I can just sit there on my couch. I look at a blank canvas. I imagine something. I critique it. I talk myself out of it before I've even painted a single brushstroke. But when there's a crowd watching, out of shame, I'm not going to sit there and be like, like they're like, is this guy lazy? Get to work. So I just get to work, and like, that's what you really should do. Just stop overthinking things and just get right to work.
That's so interesting too, because I hosted a class. It was just like a creativity class over Zoom, and it was 8 weeks, an hour and a half each. And I noticed even when I was drawing on my iPad mostly. And it's like, because I had that hour and a half and the accountability of the other people in the class, like I would be so much quicker at what I was doing because I'm like, oh, I got to get this done. Like I have this time period. But then when I'm just making art by myself, like I like lounge around and take my time with it. It's such a different process when there's other people there.
Yeah. Well, I think it's kind of, it's kind of nice maybe as like as a single person who doesn't have family and like, yeah, I have time to kind of come in here, put my music on, get my hot beverage, get the vibe going. But yeah, maybe there's a time it's almost better when you're like, get to work and you just stop overthinking things and start painting. And it is crazy going back to what I said before. Like when I do a mural, the amount of square footage I cover in a day compared to when I'm in my studio is completely different. And I think part of that could just be, being embarrassed to people. Like I don't want to be the Caltrans worker just sitting around doing nothing while everybody's watching.
Yeah. Yeah. So I'm curious about like being an artist and supporting yourself, and like what that journey has been like too, making money with your art. Like in the beginning, was it difficult? Did it happen easy for you? Um, what's it like? What was it like in the beginning and what's it like now?
It's kind of hard for me to answer because I don't really know how it's happening, but it just is happening. I do know that when I first said I was going to be a full-time artist, like that I really meant it. Like I went to the studio every single day and made a lot of work, and I really jumped in. But I told people I got to teach at an adult workshop for like a weekend in New Hampshire, and there's some people who want to be full-time artists, and I said to them, okay, well, you have your art and you have your career, and or or your art and your career, and if you start selling more, then you can start working a little more, and then slowly wean yourself. But I look back, I'm like, I didn't do that. That's not true. I saved up a little bit of money when I was younger, and I'm like, yeah, I'm just gonna be an artist. I just took a risk, and I just 100% committed. And because Lauryn, you and I we're in LA, we have so many friends here who are actors, right? And you see what happens to a lot of actors, like they got to get a side job, right? Which is totally cool because they're making their dream happen. So let's say they work at a restaurant, but it's good because they have flexibility. They can take their auditions, but maybe there's a day of the week that they should keep open for auditions, but they get a really good shift, so they start taking a shift, and it kind of compromises their acting availability, but not too much. And then they keep going, and all of a sudden, like they get moved up to assistant manager, and then their manager, and next thing you know, their side job became their main job. Like when I jumped in, like I had opportunities to do other things, but I'm like, no, I'm working on my art right now. Like I really 100% committed to it.
Yeah.
And but I had a lot of lucky breaks. I mean, I had some like one of the biggest breaks I had. I went home one day and I was pulling a canvas out of the back of my car, and as I was pulling out, Porsche pulls up right next to me. He goes, "Is that your painting?" I'm like, "Yeah." And like, "Did you make it or you own it?" I'm like, "Both. It's mine." This guy gets out of the car. He's like, "I've been looking for a painting like that for years." And he came into my place and he ended up going up to my studio. He bought a couple paintings. That he brought his friends over. They bought a couple paintings. These guys were all like in the music business, and then their lawyer for their band bought a bunch of paintings, all because I just happened to be pulling my painting out right when the car went by. So, but you
Yeah.
know what? My I was like feeling like really grateful about that, and my older friend reminded me that lucky breaks only happen to people who put themselves in positions for lucky breaks. So
I
like if
agree.
yeah, like if Izzy isn't sitting around making sculptures, she's not gonna have the lucky break of somebody falling in love with her sculpture. She's gotta have them out there. She's gotta make them. I know like a lot of these artists, they'll have like you go to their studio and they have like 4 or 5 pieces of work in their entire studio. I'm like, that's all you've been doing all this time? And yeah, you gotta get out there a lot.
Yeah. I mean, you look at like David Hockney, right? And I mean, this man makes so much art, even to this day, he's in his 80s and he's like still making art every single day. And it's like it's exactly what you said, is like in the beginning, you committed and you threw yourself in and you showed up to your studio every day to make work. So it is that, it's like the luck factor. I really do feel like is you have to make the work. You have to get out into the world. You have to share the work. And then lucky things happen because you're doing stuff.
Yeah, but I do feel like there's a little trap that some artists get into, like they're trying to make a living as an artist. I'm like, you know what? Like I was pre-law. Like if I just wanted to make money, I could go be a lawyer. Like I'm gonna make the art for myself. Like I don't sit around making paintings thinking like, how do I sell this? I make what's in my heart. Then afterwards, I'd be happy to try and sell it. But yeah, I'm not. I think the audience is smart too. If you paint from the heart, then you're gonna make a better piece, and it's more likely to sell anyways. But yeah, I made these like absurd little like sculptures the other day. Like I just got this idea. I have a whole project I'm working on today. There's no way. It's never occurred to me how to monetize it. I don't know if I can. That's not the point of it. The point of it is for just the joy of this photo shoot I'm gonna do. And I made this. I made this painting behind me because I was having fun. It was like it was the mood that hit me, but I made it for myself. I wasn't sitting around like, oh, what can I make that would sell? And I hear if sometimes my friends like, hey, why don't you, they give me these silly ideas of paintings I could do that would probably sell pretty well. But I'm like, what does that have to do with my art? That's not me. Like, yeah, but it would sell really well. I'm like, well, okay, well, maybe my own stuff would sell really well too. So stay true, right?
Yeah. How did you begin to price your work? And how do you know when to raise your prices?
Oh, I'm not sure if I'm the best person to ask on that because I'm not so I'm
I'm
not so
just
good at
curious from your perspective because you sound very intuitive, like it's just it's like you're an active person and things kind of show up for you. So I'm just curious because it seems like you don't overthink it and you just do a lot.
yeah.
So how
Okay,
does that?
so now I can just go back on precedent, like a certain paintings of certain sizes. There's a precedent I set, but how did I first get started? I mean, at the beginning, and even now, I was so amazed that people were buying my artwork. I was so humble. I'm like, oh, yeah, like this little piece over here, oh, $200. Like that's it. I'm like, you're gonna give me $200? Like I couldn't believe it. I was so and maybe so my art dealers and art reps are asking me to raise the prices, but it is kind of nice. I have an inventory. I can sell things at affordable prices. And they've slowly, the prices have gone up. I just sort of wrestle with this thing because a lot of my friends, they'll say, oh, that guy's really successful. His painting sold for 10,000 or $40,000. I'm like, that doesn't mean it's good. I'm happy when I sell a very expensive painting, but it's usually because it's very big. I mean, so quite frankly, like, like this little painting right here, it's not going to be nearly as much as this one. Um, but I don't really know how I figured it out. I think, kind of in the world of art, you kind of know how much a non-blue chip artist would sell a painting this big. I always laugh when somebody has a painting this big and they're like $10,000. I'm like, really? I bet you want $10,000 for that, but come on, man. Like have some humility. I mean, one time I sold a painting and then I was driving home and I saw a car for sale. I'm like, man, I just sold my painting for more than that car. And I'm like, that's enough. I don't need to like get as much as possible for every single painting. I'm just so happy that I'm selling the work. And but I will tell you that it's one time that I had these paintings that I really liked and I wasn't sure if I wanted to sell them because they meant a lot to me. So I took them from, they were like in the $2,500 range and I moved them up to $5,000. I'm like, you know what? If they don't sell, that's fine. My children who don't exist yet, or they can have them someday. Um, and I put them at $5,000. Well, they all sold immediately. And so it's like, well, for that price, that's funding the operation. And now there's a void, and in my heart of that piece is gone. So I'll have to make the challenge on me now is I have to make another piece that I love just as much. And I'm also like, while I was sad to lose those pieces, I was so filled with gratitude because I know so many talented artists who aren't making them. Like, damn, that's really cool. And it pays the studio rent, and the dream continues.
That's great to hear. No, I mean, I feel like I'm kind of having a bit of a moment like that as well because I just started marble carving almost a year ago, and it's a pretty all intensive process, and it takes a long time to make a
I bet it
piece.
takes a really long time.
Yeah, definitely a few weeks for one, if not months. But um, I have a piece right now that is for sale that I'm just wondering if I can actually part with. It's in my living room and I love seeing it every day. And it's the first time that I'm actually getting to live with my work, like in my home. I guess I just never thought of really having my work in my home before. I went to like a pretty, straight edge art school where we never really talked about making work for the home. It was always for the gallery or the institution and stuff. And I've really started changing my thinking around that and just enjoying having artwork in my place that's made by me. And yeah, I guess of course for the right price, but at the same time, then again, you always think like, oh, if the price is too low, then some people won't think it's good, or if it's too high, then it will alienate some people. And it's all about
Yeah,
what.
there's a sweet spot. The good thing about what you do is that people are going to be like, they're going to see it's a marble carving. They're going to know this just by just looking at it. They're like, this is something that needs to be priced high because obviously a lot of time, and skill went into it. And is there something beautiful like when the person who, like, sometimes somebody could buy it and then you'll never see the piece again. It's gone.
Mm.
And then, but maybe there's that beautiful thing, like the person who bought it, they live nearby, them, you're like, oh, it's still like, or you just have a connection with them. I mean, I sold paintings to, strangers who have become lifelong friends. So hopefully that painting, if it goes someplace, hopefully it goes someplace meaningful. And it's like really like, again, like people get so caught up in like their ego and the prestige. I'm like, isn't it really about the human connection? I mean, isn't that what art is really about anyways?
Yeah. So
Are you
well said.
anywhere near, are you near your sculpture right now?
No,
I would love, I was hoping you could turn your screen around and we could all see it.
but I'll send you some photos, and you can see it on my Instagram and on my website, isottapage.com, or at isottapage on Instagram. But actually, before this conversation, I listened to your episode on the Beyond the Palette podcast.
Oh,
And
that's the one where I didn't speak loud enough. I was telling you.
oh, I
You can
heard you
hear it?
great. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. I really enjoyed it, and I thought it was really interesting. And I heard you mention on there that one of your, your great loves is Francesco Clemente.
Oh, yes.
And I actually used to intern at a gallery who like represented him, so I used to like catalog a lot of documentation
Oh,
and stuff for
really?
his work, and that's where I learned about him. And I'm a big fan as well. So I
Did you get to meet him personally?
no, unfortunately not, but I did spend a lot of time looking at his work. And
Is he
yeah,
from Naples? Where's he from?
I don't know.
Yes.
I think maybe Rome. I'm not sure. Yeah.
Yeah. So was that in New York City?
No, it was in Rome.
Oh, it was in Rome.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
he has a big presence. He's an interesting guy, right? He has like stuff he's a New York presence, Italian presence, and then obviously influenced by his time in India. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's cool. I'm glad you like his stuff.
No, I also see the connection with your work as well. Um, yeah.
And what about
And
sculptors? Do you have a favorite?
right now, honestly, it changes all the time.
It's
Right
hard to answer
now,
that question.
I'm really into Camille Henro, who's a French sculptor and video artist and interdisciplinary, and then also Hannah Levy, who's based in New York. She makes these really crazy sculptures out of like metal and silicone that are like with claw feet and like really interesting kind of like design furniture-esque inspired mixed media pieces that are really cool.
Isn't it interesting how sometimes you can be inspired? Like I get inspired by maybe a sculptor or I love the word sculptress. I love that word. I might see a sculptress and it might not make me want to make a sculpture, but make me want to paint. I mean, I really get inspired by musicians. So it doesn't have to be like so on the nose like what you're doing. I mean, I remember one time I met this guy in Brazil. I'm like, man, I just want to paint the way you play music. You see somebody doing their thing and it's so inspiring sometimes.
I love that. Yeah. It's so interesting, the crossover with all the different mediums. And
Well, we are artistic cousins.
yeah. Yeah. Well, cool. This has been such a fabulous conversation. I really appreciate you coming here today and sharing your work with us. And where can people find you?
Oh, okay. Thank you. Let's see. On the my Instagram is Gus Harper Art. My website is gusharperart.com. So that'll get the job done. And my next show in Los Angeles will probably be in late spring. So I'll put that on my website eventually once I decide where it's going to be.
Amazing. Well, thanks so much, and have a great trip as well.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, thanks, Gus. It's been really nice to connect with you, and hope to meet you in person sometime soon as well.
We'll make it happen. And I am actually coming. Well, I'm going to go to Rome, but I might go to Spain on that same trip. So I'll let you know.
Awesome. Please do.
All right, you too. Talk to you later.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for being here. When you have a moment, please leave us a rating or review in Apple Podcasts or wherever you listen, and email us at listen@artistpodcast.com. We'd love to hear from you. Our music is by Black Wonder Twins. And now, a final message from Lauryn.
Hey, it's your creative career coach, Lauryn Hill. If you're ready to find more fulfillment and purpose in your life and make money doing work you love, I want to invite you to sign up for a free coaching consultation. In this 60-minute assessment, we'll talk about where you're currently at in your career and creative life. We'll get clear on where you want to go and what your vision is, and then we'll figure out what's getting in the way of you making it happen. After this intake process, I'll share with you solutions, what it would look like for us to work together, and how one-on-one coaching can help you create the results that you desire, but you have been struggling to create on your own. And if you feel like you're not quite clear on your goals yet or don't really understand what coaching is, that's okay. Don't let it stop you from signing up for a consultation. I guarantee that you'll leave the consultation with more clarity on your goals and a better understanding of the profound impact that coaching can have on the rest of your life and career. So head over to curatedSplash.com/start-now. That's curatedSplash.com/start-now and click the free strategy consultation button to sign up now. Hope to hear from you soon.